All right, where do I go from here? So I'm going to show you Ed Benedict. I learned about Ed at Spumco. I learned about a lot of these artists at Spumco because John had a library that we all had access to, and it was his own personal collection of books. And this was John's favorite character designer, and if it was John's favorite character designer, I sure was going to figure out why. This is Ed's original concept for Ricochet Rabbit. It's one of my favorite drawings of all time because I cannot believe how simple it is, how perfect the arrangement of lines and shapes are, how much charm and appeal it has. A lot of really stylized, limited animation designs are kind of dead, but Ed's never are. The way on the left side of the head, it comes to a point, and on the right side of the head, it's a little more rounded. Like, he understands contrasts, he understands how to play line and shape off of each other, and he knows how to make flat shapes work as volume, which is really interesting to me. It takes so much knowledge to be able to draw this simply. And nobody did it better than Ed. These are his early sketches for Yogi Bear, I think. And they may have just been background bears for an H&B cartoon, I'm not sure. Then Ed's process was and I read in interviews, I think it was an interview that John Kay did with Ed, saying that his method was he would draw and draw and draw, go out in the garage, smoke a cigarette, saw wood, and then come back in and draw some more. Here's him trying out just different designs, different shapes, different ideas. These things just look alive to me. It's always been kind of hard to figure out what he has that some of the other artists that were doing designs for Hanna-Barbera had. This is some of his personal work. And this next series of drawings are all concepts for this waiter character. I don't know what they were from, but I think it's really interesting to see him play with a lot of different variations of designs, because it's really easy as a designer, and I'm really guilty of this. You do one design, but you know you need to do more, and then they're all just kind of slight tweaks on that first design. Ed here gives a bunch of completely different takes on this character, and I love seeing his thinking here as he just kind of tries stuff. So from there, I think I'm going to go to Russell Patterson. So Russell Patterson was an artist in the 20s and 30s. Well, he was at his peak in the 20s and 30s. His career lasted up into the 50s or 60s. He eventually started losing his sight and had to stop working. But he was also kind of a celebrity. He was really good looking and had a penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, and we'd go to all the parties. He was friends with movie stars. And as a young guy, that was really exciting to me too. I like that idea that you could be an artist and also be kind of a rock star. Like that, my ego liked that. I thought that you didn't have to be anonymous, unwashed guy curled over your drawing board in your basement, that you could actually sort of live the life that he was portraying. I just thought he was cool. And he's also a brilliant designer. Like when you look at this illustration, the balance of shape and dark and light and the line work, that lead guy with the megaphone, the patterns on his jacket, his shoes, the weirdness of it all, which I think is an essential element. Like that movie poster in the foreground. I like how just weird it is. To me, it shows the personality. Like, if art gets too perfect in a way, if it gets too standardized, if it doesn't look like it came out of a person with personality and emotion and quirks, it's just not. It's not interesting to me. It doesn't grab me. All the different attitudes of the flappers, and he's credited with creating the flapper look along with John Held Jr., who was another illustrator at the same time. Like he had a fashion article in a magazine, a column that he would write each month, and he would just talk about trends in fashion, and he would show it in his art, always up to date. This one blows me away, that those black shapes around her, the way those are designed, and again, just the balance of everything. That arm, both arms. If this was completely blacked in as a silhouette, it would be almost as attractive. Like you would read clearly. This is from a tabloid, just a detail from a tabloid newspaper strip that he did. The way he tilted the older woman's head back. The way he arranged so many figures and the architectural details. And they're not dead, they're not stiff. This stuff has motion. That statue in the background is pretty incredible. Kind of a funny gag. It's one of the very first that I saw. It was really hard to find stuff like this when I was a kid. Like I was obsessed with reading interviews with artists, again because I was trying to find the secret. And I'd read interviews with like comic strip artists like Alex Toth or Milton Caniff, and one name kept popping up over and over, and it was Russell Patterson. I go to the library, nothing. I go to the bookstores, nothing. Couldn't go on the internet and look it up. So I just, like, I gotta find this guy. Maybe he's got the secret. Maybe he knows. Maybe it's Russell Patterson that I need to find, then I'll know how to draw. So I'd have my route to hit all the bookstores in town. I'd go several times a week. I'd start at one, go through the humor section, go through the illustrated book section, go through the art book section, and I'd usually leave just sad and frustrated because it was always the same old stuff. And I'd buy some stuff because it would be kind of close, but it just never was. I just knew it wasn't it. One of the nice things about coming to Los Angeles was there are a few more options, but even that would be frustrating. Glenn and I would go to these like old magazine stores or movie memorabilia stores or antique stores, and we'd find Patterson in like an old college humor magazine. We'd ask the guy, how much is this? Oh, $300. He said, I could get, they'll buy them for movie props or something like that. So I'd see it, that's what I want, and I can't have it. So it would be really frustrating. That's a lovely Patterson original. Next, I'm going to show you Earl Oliver Hearst. So my main resource for reference, other than the bookstores, was the local library. And they had two books that I would check out over and over and over. And one was called 40 Illustrators and How They Work, and the other was called The Art of Cartooning by Gene Burns. And they both had articles on Hearst. And when I saw it, I knew that this guy had it. Like I knew that this was really close to what I was looking for. It was fluid, it was bright, it was happy, it was sexy, it was just alive. And it took what I was like getting into in animation, the simplicity, the color, and sort of the fluidity of it, and applied it to illustration. And he's kind of an anomaly in illustration. He was in Collier's and Saturday Evening Post along with, guys like Norman Rockwell and Al Parker, Kobe Whitmore, John Whitcomb. But he was kind of the only one, with just a few exceptions, that was a cartoonist at heart. But he was a cartoonist who would use models, he would reference his stuff, he'd really work it out. This is one of the very first illustrations I saw of his, and it was in black and white. And it's my favorite magazine cover of all time. And these are his roughs for it, which were printed in The Art of Cartooning, one of the books I check out from the library. I studied these and stared at these for so long. The way he was able to capture in a single flowing line those forms and shapes and just so much life and appeal in it. You can see in the upper right he's trying a bit more realistic head. And there's an interview that accompanied these illustrations, and he said he finished the complete illustration when it was based on this lower right sketch. He had a color kind of graphic blob behind her, and he brought it in, and the art director said, "Can you do this without the background?" And he was really disappointed, but they thought, okay, I'll see what I can do. He said I had to change her color tone a little bit, her skin tone, so that it would read against the white. And in the end, it ended up being a better cover. And he actually had a policy of doing every illustration twice, like fully done, complete, finished illustration. He would do the first one, and then he would do it again to see how much better he could make it. And I've seen so many originals have come to market, and I've been able to see, I wish I should have brought some, but the two versions side by side, and you can see how much better he pushed it the second time. So I had the illustrations that were in those books. It was maybe 3 or 4 illustrations, and I went on the hunt for more, and I could not find anything. There was just nothing. He didn't illustrate books really. He did a couple, but I didn't know about him. And so I was so desperate. I think around this time there was this art instruction magazine called Step by Step, and there was an article in each one that would celebrate some illustrator from the past. And they were written by a guy named Fred Taraba, I think his name was, and he worked with the Society of Illustrators in New York. So I wrote him a letter saying, I want Hearst, do you have Hearst? And he wrote me back, and this was all like snail mail, and said, yeah, we've got a pretty good stack of them here. I'll have one of our interns copy them for you. And I got a big stack of Hearst photocopies. And I had suggested, like, hey, how about using Hearst for one of those articles in Step by Step magazine? And he said, yeah, that's a really good idea. A few months later, it came out. I love this stuff. I can see a lot of Disney. I have a feeling that Disney artists like Milk Hall were looking at this stuff. I like that it's controlled but spontaneous, if that makes any sense. There's structure to it, and there's flow to it. Stuff it's not just stacked shapes, like is what I was doing, and I still do a lot of times for work, where building figures like a doll, stick a head on a neck, on a body, on hips, on legs. This stuff is sort of a piece. I love the composition of these, the way the type is worked around, the way he used the white space around the figures. That black shape in the foreground, how he had the nerve to do that is amazing to me. And just how interesting those characters are. The guy laying on his stomach on the ground, and the grandma shucking the peas. It was really rare to see stuff this stylized in those magazines. The only other person I could really think of that was doing sort of cartoony illustrative art was Vernon Grant, who created Snap, Crackle, and Pop. It's a beautiful cover. His method was, he would almost completely complete the illustration, and then he would call in a model to check hands, maybe get a new idea for hair. And I think maybe if he had gone to the model earlier than that, it might have stiffened up the life in his drawings. That's such a cool graphic shape for figure. Like if you saw that on a stand, I think that would really jump out at you. And these were large tabloids that he was doing these for. That line from the back of her hair to her neck, around her shoulder, leading into her hip, is really exciting for me. And he's not cheating, like that motorcycle, you know he referenced it. That's really cool. This is a comp that he did. I really like the looseness of that. So I think I'm going to go from there to Hank Ketchum. So Hank Ketchum is best known for Dennis the Menace. He started out as an animator for Disney. He worked on Fantasia, I think a little bit on Pinocchio, some stuff for Walter Lantz. And then he started a career as a magazine cartoonist for Saturday Evening Post. He had a few in the New Yorker, Collier's. And then he eventually sold Dennis the Menace as a panel. I think I know that I had Dennis paperbacks as a kid, but I didn't really start looking at him until I read an interview with an artist named Jaime Hernandez, who does Love and Rockets. And he did an interview in the Comics Journal, and I discovered so much from that one interview. I discovered a lot from those Comics Journal interviews, because as soon as I'd read a name, if an artist I admired, I would mention a name of an artist they liked, I'd be on the hunt for it. Because I figured, well, maybe they've got the secret. Maybe they know how to, maybe they can show me how to draw. And Ketchum is, I'll probably say this about everyone I show you, is like the greatest cartoonist ever. But he really is. He had the admiration of his peers, and he could do anything. I love the way the mom's feet are turned there. Those bold slashing black marks on her dress. The perfect props kind of showing the floor plane that Dennis is on. And Ketchum was good his entire career. A lot of people think, oh, the only Dennis that are good are the early ones, and it's just not true. I think this is from 74. And this is just mind-blowing to me to look at. Everything from that little tree on the TV to the way he indicated the light on the dad and the back of the mom's head, the perfect arrangement of shapes, the sleepiness in Dennis, the way he did the image on the TV. It's tasteful, but it's exciting. It's confident. Another one from the 70s. I love that bodybuilder. I love the way the dad's feet are intertwined and how the dad is just so not that bodybuilder. He used silhouette a lot and better than anyone. It's just mind-blowing. This is some of his earlier magazine work. The personality in all these characters, the guy to the far right reading the paper with a cigarette, the attitudes of the women, the way their feet are posed, the elbows on the table, the waitress, you can tell she's worn out, the people at the bar, some of them are having a conversation, some are reading the menu, there's a guy pouring maybe coffee. Every inch of this is alive and telling a story. Skirt shape and the looks on those women that he captured with dot eyes and body language. So this is interesting to me. You look at his finish, how slick and clean and polished it is. And I just figured that was how he drew, but he didn't. He worked this stuff out with a lot of pencil. And then he would lightbox his final direct in ink over these. You know, he just didn't just carve out a simple silhouette. He worked it out. I'm going to show you Owen Fitzgerald. found out about Owen again in the Spumco library. He was one of John Kay's favorite cartoonists. And again, he was an animator. He was worked for a time as Chuck Jones' layout artist. He worked for Disney. He worked pretty much for all the studios. He was just a workhorse. He would work doing animation or animation layout all day, and he'd go home and draw comic books. And I love this cover. It's got Hearst in it a little, maybe, or at least the same thinking. That cat is great. His women are just lively and adorable. It's a short story he did called Bebop Bobby. I found this one in the Spumco library. It was one of John's favorites. And this stuff just... One of the things I like about reading Owen's comics, everything kind of pops from panel to panel. And that doesn't make any sense to say, but if you read them, you'll feel it. It hits beats. This dad kind of, you can tell he's tense the way he's holding the paper from the music, and then they just explode as the music hits the peak. Him charging in, stop that thing, pounding on the table. The character in the lower right panel just zips in. Dad's losing it. Smashes it up. This is, he did so many comics. This is Moronica. Really bad puns. It's just so appealing. He also ghosted the Dennis the Menace comic book for 50 or 60 issues, working in Hank Ketchum's style. And they're great. I think they're just starting to be reprinted. And I'd haunt comic conventions. I flipped through these were always, he drew all of like the Adventures of Bob Hope, but most of his stuff was 1 or 2 page backups and obscure humor comics from the 40s. So I'd go to conventions and I'd have to open all these comics and flip through them and finding, hoping that I'd find an Owen. And I'd know it immediately if I saw it. And it was just like that Russell Patterson stuff. I'd find a great Owen Fitzgerald comic and it'd be $200 or something like that. So I'd try really hard to find the chewed up ones, ones that had no cover, or because I didn't care about the rest of the comic. It's the panel from. This one's got really great posing. Her reaction when the bear drops in front of her, she kind of goes up on her toes.